Howdy, and welcome to Early Reflections, the podcast where young folks talk about making it in the sonic arts. I'm your host, Adam Daniel Jones, and my guest today, all the way from Cyprus, is my friend Mary Stephanie. Mary, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Adam?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. I'm really excited to have you here. It's definitely a long way. I think this is the if not the longest, the second farthest distance I've had a guest. I interviewed our buddy James Vincent, who's from Australia. So I think that might possibly be a tiny bit farther. But otherwise, recording from Cyprus, that's really, really cool. And I'm glad to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, Cyprus is on the other side of the world. I think right now it's like 9 p.m. and for you it's like morning.
Yeah, it's wild. It's 11 a.m. It's 11:12 a.m. here. So that's a really wild time difference. Awesome. So Mary, real quick before we get into it, what are some pronouns that I can refer to you as?
Oh, it's her, she.
Great. Awesome. Sounds good. So for our audience, Mary as a performer goes by the moniker Saint Mary. So before we kind of jump into more interview type stuff, where did you come up with the name Saint Mary? Like, is there any real meaning behind it, or was it kind of just a cool name? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so the name, it happened when I was in Boston still, like studying at Berkeley, and I was sitting in my apartment. I remember it was on like the floor of my living room because we didn't even have furniture at the time. And I was with my best friend Noah and Maddie, who's also a really good friend of mine. And we're trying to find names for my artist project, and nothing really stick with me that didn't have my name in it. So we're coming up with like random stuff like inhale, exhale, whatever. And then Maddie said Saint Mary, like as a joke. And like we laughed and everything. And then I was like, you know what? It's not that bad. Because also my last name is Stephanie's. So the first two letters is ST. So it's like you put the ST in the front. So it kind of happened like that. And I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like it. And the more I was like hearing it in my head and blah, 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 like I really liked it. So I just stick with that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And it's sort of, obviously there's like kind of biblical allusions to it, like kind of visual references. So if you wanted, you could also kind of make that assumption. It's a cool, it's a really like convenient name, I feel like, for you. So that's great. I love that.
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing actually, even though I didn't want to like take it too like churchy like, but I liked how religious stuff sometimes like reminds me of royal but dark too in some way. Like there's a way I think to like bring that into your brand. So I kind of like that. I think the only bad thing is that when you search like Saint Mary music, it's like cathedral music. That's the only thing.
Oh yeah, that must be weird. Yeah, but yeah, you just I guess just look up like Saint Mary, producer or whatever. Hopefully it narrows the search terms a little bit, but I totally understand.
Yeah, I am 6th on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
I have 5 Saint Marys above me.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll be sure to put that in there. I'll be like, okay, guys, you're number 6 down there. Awesome. So for our audience, Mary is a producer, an engineer, a composer, a songwriter, a DJ. What else did I miss in describing you as a creative person?
I think that's all. Like that's already a lot. But I do all of it. Yeah. And I love all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's something that's really cool, especially, and I feel like it's kind of unique to us as a generation, because I feel like I'm pretty sure we're about the same age, and it's sort of something that people our age do is just, having that sort of complete control over your creative output and sort of your vision to the world. It's something that I feel like is really important to have. Obviously you can have collaboration and all of those elements separately, but at least being cognizant of sort of like where you go and like the direction you want to take your own like vision into is something that is like I feel like really important.
Yeah, I feel like when you can do like a lot of things, you have more control over the final product. So if something goes wrong, like you can only blame yourself, even though I love collaborating like with singers and songwriters, I love to collaborate all the time because I am not a singer, unfortunately. That's the one thing I'm kind of pissed at. I don't know, my genes, that I'm not a good singer. But I love working with other people. It's cool when you have a say in the songwriting as well, instead of just, producing and then getting a top liner, to fill in the space.
Absolutely. Well, I guess it's never too late if you want to get into to doing vocal stuff, especially I've kind of found that in my own like sort of messing around with plugins and stuff, it's you can kind of, there's a lot of tools that you can make yourself sound pretty good nowadays. So I'm guilty of that with this podcast even. So
no, you know what? It's true. Like I've seen a lot of producers actually do their own vocals, like after a certain point. I think it's the accent that bothers me more than the pitch, because the pitch is kind of okay. Like even like singers, like you tune everyone because no one's perfect. But I think it's the accent.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I might have a bit of a bias as like an American, but I think it's really cool, like hearing singers and like, even if they're singing in English, like having that like slight accent come through. I think that's sort of interesting. But I totally understand, like me listening to my own like singing. I've done a little bit of singing, not really like in some like live band kind of aspects. And I've always just kind of been like, oh God, like I don't really know if my voice has really much to add to this sound, but it's I guess it stems from where you come from,
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like people generally just focus on the voice. Like every time I show like my friends something I made, their first comment is like, oh, I love this guy's voice or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I did the production though. Like, can you compliment that?
Right.
But it's totally understandable. Like I get it as a listener.
Yeah, totally. That's something that we'll probably talk about that later. We'll dive in a little bit more in depth about some of your songs. But yeah, I totally understand. Like I've never really been a person who's made my own music with lyrics as an element, or with like definitely with lyrical like voice melody kind of things, but not necessarily. I've never sat down and tried to write lyrics for something, so I'm totally in the same boat as you. Like I don't listen to lyrics first. That's almost the last thing I listen to.
Yeah, I get that. You know what? The more I listen to music now, I feel like I focus on the lyrics more. I don't know what it is. I guess I just found some really cool songs with amazing lyrics. I'm like, ooh, I can see. Like, I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but like, I feel like girls listen to lyrics more than guys.
Oh, interesting.
I might be wrong, but from my experience with my friends, my guy friends don't really notice the lyrics, and my girlfriends, because sometimes like you're in your feelings and you want to hear something that you resonate with, and it's not a melody, it's like a line, like a lyric. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I think, but I don't know.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I guess that's obviously that could be another like aspect of it is looking at more kind of quote unquote like biological factors or whatever. Like that's really interesting. That I'd love to see like some people do some kind of study about that, like clinical kind of research study about that. So kind of moving on a little bit. So would you talk to me a little bit sort of about your like upbringing and then sort of your musical upbringing in tandem, and how like sort of how much music was a part of your childhood and then maybe through to your adolescence, and sort of what drove you to considering music as a career?
Yeah. So when I was like around 6, I was kind of like copying everything that my sister was doing, which she's going to be so glad to like hear that, but it's the truth. And at some point, like she started taking piano lessons, and I wanted to do the same thing. But it was kind of different because like I would see her play on the little keyboard we had at home, and I felt like jealous, like like a jealous girlfriend. I don't know. I just really wanted to be the person playing that. So then I started taking piano lessons, and she stopped. So I kept doing it. So I didn't copy her on that, thankfully. And that's how I got into like music. And a bit later, I started like writing my own stuff because I was doing classical at the time. And we were doing like 3 pieces maybe a year when I was doing my exams and all of that. So it was kind of boring, to be honest, to just do like 3 pieces a year. So I would start like changing them up on my own and like coming up with my own stuff. So eventually I would write my own songs. I think my first song was a Christmas song. It's so funny. I must have it somewhere, but it was kind of cute. And I realized like I liked writing more than performing. And then I was doing guitar and all of that. And okay, some vocal lessons, but they didn't work. And eventually, when I was a teenager, we were doing like, there were a lot of raves. And because Cyprus it's an island, so a lot of the touring DJs in Europe, they were coming here to play. And I feel like as a culture, we like to go out a lot. So I was going to a lot of just electronic shows. And there was this one beach bar that had an event every Sunday. And they had a different DJ. And it was like famous DJs. Like once, I think it was like Martin Garrix and like this kind of stuff. So I just loved, I love the idea of making your own music, not having to sing on it, but still like writing your own stuff and like DJing. Because like performing as a pianist was never like, it never felt like home, I guess. Like I loved piano and that's what got me into music, but it never felt like I felt 100% comfortable like playing piano in front of people. But with DJing, it was different, which is kind of weird because it's still performing, but I don't know. I guess it's just the thing that you play that's making all the difference. So I was at a show and I was a bit drunk and I was like, you know what? That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And like a kind of drunk decision kind of stuck with me. So I went to Berkeley and I learned production at the age of like 19, which is kind of late, I feel. I mean, that's what a lot of people that I see, like they start producing when they're like 16. And I'm like, wow, because in Cyprus, no one really produces from such a young age because it's not something super normal. So it just kind of started when I got into Berkeley.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like a couple things about that, like sort of hearing you feel that performing on your end is like more like interesting, or not necessarily interesting, but like is better like if you're behind a DJ booth rather than playing piano. I totally get that. Mm-hmm. Like I've played a few different instruments like in like bands and stuff. Like I've played drums is my primary instrument, so I definitely feel the most comfortable with that. But it's totally different like if you're playing, I've played bass in bands, I play guitar in bands. And it's just a total like different comfort zone, you know? So I totally feel that. And then also with hearing that you got into production sort of a bit later time in your life, that's also really interesting, I feel like. But it also is probably equated to sort of the culture of Cyprus in a way, you know, like you were saying, like you guys like to go out to clubs and there's like a significant like kind of rave scene there. So I feel like it probably, you know, that's probably why a lot of your like instincts with production like stuck and why you have such like a really cool like refined sound, like not necessarily that many years later like in your production career. So that I feel like it's, you know, it's kind of in you, like in your like, you know, DNA almost, that like spirit of, you know, making club music, that kind of thing. So
thank you. I think I was kind of lucky to have been introduced to it as a big fan, because I can sort of still think as a big fan of EDM or whatever, and like approach like production the same way. And I think also the fact that I got into DJing later on, even though a lot of people start DJing and then they start producing, which is kind of interesting. I didn't think it was that way until I met a lot of people in the field and I was like, wow, I'm the one that did it opposite. But also DJing kind of changed a little bit the way that I produce, like my mindset, because there's certain things you're thinking about when you're thinking that this song is something that you'd be playing live. Like, oh, I should have like this break that I can then mix with another song, while, you know, you just gotta experiment. But I get it more now that I'm also DJing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's again really interesting. Like it's sort of the first thing it brings me back to is like somebody like Rick Rubin, where he really like adamantly like states that he does stuff from the perspective of a fan, and like he like really tries to put himself in the shoes of like a consumer, and that like really helps like find out like what's like palatable about your music, what maybe needs work. So that's a really like invaluable thing to have, is that kind of like sense of what it's going to eventually be, you know?
Yeah. And also I think because you once you're into the music too much, you can't really be a good judge. And that's horrible. But I think there's a way to get around that still. Like, you know, when you listen to music and you kind of analyze it instead of just feel it. But I think there's ways. Yeah, there's ways to get around it. Because I'm okay with that. Thank God so far.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm just out of curiosity. We talked a little bit about the sort of culture around like EDM and stuff in Cyprus. Are there any like Cyprus based? I don't know what the right word would be, but like Cyprus based like producers that you are really into, and like who maybe our listeners should look into and like listen to.
I mean, like EDM ones, I don't really know any, to be honest. There's a lot of DJs, but producers, not that much. It might be DJs that got more into DJing that got them to the point of like, you know, producing a little bit, but I don't know anyone that's like, oh, he's a producer, DJ, you know, that kind of thing. I love Nico the Owl. He's a producer from Cyprus, but he's in LA, so we met there. And he produces for other people, and we had a session once, and he's awesome, like an awesome producer and an awesome person. But for producers who are in Cyprus right now, I don't know. Like I can figure out like some DJs, because like the DJs that play at the clubs and stuff, but production, not really. Like the ones that do production, it's mostly like advertisement production or like the classic like engineering production, you know,
Right.
like the recording drums and all this stuff, but not like electronic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's again really interesting. Like I feel like I guess it's interesting for me because I'm, you know, obviously I went to college like for, you know, they call it like electronic production and design or whatever, but I never really was as into this sort of more like traditional like EDM scene. I kind of gravitated more towards like experimental kind of music. So I guess it's interesting hearing that. I don't necessarily have the like insight for all of those kind of different scenes and sort of that disjunct between like production and DJing like that, and sort of, you know, how it flip-flops, you know, some people will naturally gravitate toward one and then another. That's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like I got more into EDM because the concept of the drop is mostly to me like the concept of having like a peak where you're like, oh, this is where you're gonna go off, you know? So kind of like that, even though the whole drop situation kind of got out of hand. Like sometimes, you know, people, they only care about the drop, and I kind of like having the entire thing being interesting. Like I think that's the ideal.
Yeah.
Because eventually, like, you put music on Spotify and then you think, okay, there's people just listening in their earbuds on Spotify. So I'm really I'm hoping at least, like, to make music that can fit both worlds, or at least make both. I don't know.
Cool.
One track is going to be live and then the other track is going to be mostly like Spotify.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's also another like really smart sort of strategy I feel like going into this industry is recognizing the like needs and wants from the different markets and stuff. So that again, like I super commend you on that. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
So, real quick, you know, we talked about this before. We met in the same department at Berkeley. We met in the EPD department. Overall, like, you know, sort of looking at your career now, I can sort of tell, but for the audience, how was your experience? Like, what kind of invaluable like lessons did you learn? Not just like technical wise, but like other, you know, sort of other disciplines. Like, how would you like describe your experience in the department and sort of at Berkeley?
Yeah, honestly, it was great. I think I got into Berkeley thinking I wanted to do pro music. It's like this major, for the people that don't know, that you can combine whatever you want. But then I had some people tell me like, it's like you're not focusing on one thing, so you're not getting in depth on a certain thing. So then I was like, I'm gonna do contemporary production and writing, which is mostly advertising. And there was the only major that I didn't know what it was EPD. And funnily enough, like I got into EPD and I realized that was the one that was the closest to what I wanted to do, even though we never had a class that was like EDM production. Actually, we had one, but it was not EDM production. It was just called that. But it was like producing in a studio, basically, if that's the right way to say it. But generally, Berkeley helped me a lot because it was the only place that had just musicians. So 24/7, like imagine all the kind of like music nerds from every high school meeting in one school. So I think it's just even talking about music all the time was great for me because all of my friends back home, they don't do music at all, let alone like production. So that was great. And I'd say for APD, also working in APD was awesome for me because I was working at we're like giving studio equipment and stuff. And like the work was nothing, like was pretty easy, but having like 8-hour shifts with people that do like also the same major as you and talk about gear and production and then show them your ideas and then get feedback and all this kind of stuff. Like that was awesome. And also another thing, as like an international student, I feel like that's when I got the most comfortable with English because I always spoke English and I went to an English school, but making friends in English was always different. And it probably took me like 2 years until I got that job because we talked for like 8 hours straight.
Yeah.
So then I was good. I could speak English with my friends like really well.
Yeah, again, like, and it's sort of on the opposite side for me, like as an American going to a school in Boston, you know, it was for me, like I'm from the Pacific Northwest, you know, all of my listeners, I think at this point know that, but it was a bit, it's, you know, a travel, it's a bit of a, you know, a flight to get to Boston. But that was the coolest thing is that like I tended to gravitate myself more around like international students and stuff too. And particularly the EPD department, there are so many international students in it. Like some of my best friends were like from India, from like Korea, like tons of different places. It's just that I come in Berkeley for that as well, but I like particularly in the EPD department and like seeing that kind of innovation from people like no matter where, it's just so cool. And like having us all kind of gravitate around the same like, you know, sphere of knowledge and of like technology and all that kind of stuff is really was like something I am never gonna forget and will like always be like something that sticks with me. And yeah,
no, that was super cool at Berkeley, and it kind of gives you like perspective because like I left Cyprus a couple of times, but I never lived so far away and like actually hang out with people from like, you know, other countries, and like cultural shock can be a thing. I thought it was nothing, and then I sort of had it. I think the way that I had it was that my jokes were not funny. And then other people were not funny to me. So we kind of had this gap. But now, for example, like my roommate is American and he's awesome. And like, I think he's the funniest person ever. So I think it's kind of like understanding a different culture, and, you know, they also understand you. So you're kind of meeting the other person like halfway.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So moving on a bit, we've talked a bit about, you know, the scene in Cyprus and how awesome it was. But are there any like specific artists that have shaped the way that you create music or listen to music? And even sort of in the realm of like your collaborators or your peers, like, are there any specific people that you want to sort of shout out that have made like really like significant changes on like your view of music in general?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many people. Okay. Before I forget, I'm going to say my roommate, Noah Hubble.
Yeah. I love Noah.
Because we've spent so much time together and he's awesome. And you know what? I consider him, like, I've collaborated with people at Berkeley, but never really co-produced with anyone until I lived with him in LA. And I remember I was kind of like stressed out at first to like produce with other people because I was like, what if it's not good enough? And like, what if our styles don't match? And I was actually like, he knew about all that, like, because we know each other too well.
Yeah.
And eventually we would make music without intending to even make music. So it just came out so naturally that I feel like he was kind of my way into figuring out how collaboration works with another producer. Because it's if you vibe with the other person creatively and like personally and whatever, it's just such a fun experience to just work on music instead of do something else with your friends, you know? Yeah, and also he gave me his mixing template, which was amazing. It was great. But for other producers, like producers I admire, definitely Aral Grime is like on the top for me. I love Alice in Wonderland because I mean, I love her music and I love her as a person, like from what I see on social media. And I saw her live twice. And I think maybe even more than her music, I love her shows because she literally like, she puts her everything into it and she's just so into it. And I love that. And that's kind of what I'd want to be doing with my shows eventually when I can do shows.
Yeah.
Also, Rez for sure. Even though her sound is totally like, it's a different thing, but I just love how unique she is. And yeah, she's just made an amazing brand and just the sound for her. There's so many other people like Jules I also love because they all kind of do like trap EDM. Rez doesn't. She does more like bass. That's too generic, but yeah. Damn, I'm missing out so many people. Oh, you know what? I also love a lot of people and who also just made a huge impact on me, like musically, but are not EDM artists, like Bon Iver. I think the whole lyric thing that I got super into, like, you know, listening to the lyrics, Bon Iver is like, oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Definitely
yeah.
him.
He, and especially like the later albums, like I have such distinct memories, specifically the 2016 record, 22 A Million. We were in Boston when that album came out. We were both, I don't know if we were in EPD at that time, but yeah, I just have such distinct memories of, I took a bus ride because it was around Thanksgiving time and I took a bus ride from Boston to like way western Massachusetts and it was super snowy and like sort of just like the perfect like wintertime energy kind of. And it was just like such a profound like thing sitting and listening to that on my headphones. Like, yeah, that's like honestly like as far as like albums like that I listen to that like have stuck with me and sort of shaped how I view production and, you know, sound design and everything, that's like honestly might be number one, like most influential for me.
Oh my God. I love that. Yeah, no, also that weather is perfect for Bon Iver. I think where he makes his music is basically like up in the woods away from everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I know the first record he made, which was For Emma Forever Ago, which like came out in 2006 or 2007. I can't remember, you know, audience, please correct me. But yeah, I know that he made that record like basically on a laptop in like a cabin with no power, basically. And like just kind of used like his laptop battery to power stuff.
Oh
and
my God.
like just he talks a lot. There's interviews with him where he talks about sort of like the element of like ambience in an album. He made that record in a room with kind of really terrible reverb in it, but it's so distinctive to the sound of it, you know?
Yeah. Also, I feel like his voice has a certain reverb. I don't know. Or it's just, I don't know, the processing on his voice, it's just Bon Iver. Yeah. I heard this song he has with Taylor Swift, Exile, and I'm not a fan, like a huge fan of Taylor Swift, but my God, this song is so gorgeous and like the songwriting is amazing. And it's like an example of like, you know, lyrics, you know, and like the Spotify Wrapped thing came to me, like, you know, where it says like the music you listen to the most over the year. And some of the top songs were not even EDM because I think like I love EDM, but I love it especially when it's live, and when I'm alone I just listen to like sad songs like that.
Oh my God, yeah, that's super funny. Okay, that's good to know because I've I'm not really a huge Taylor Swift fan either, but I heard people gave that Folklore album a really good reviews and stuff, and they gave and I looked at the track list of the new one. I forget what it was, like Evermore or something. They gave that really, really good reviews too, and it has a lot of the same like collaborators.
Yeah, honestly, that was the only song that I heard from that album. I don't even know. But Yeah, that was amazing though. You have to listen to it. It's called Exile.
Okay, great. I'll write it down. I will literally like, I'm going to find something to write that down right now.
But you have to be sad to like appreciate it the most. So just
Yeah,
wait
totally.
for that moment, you know?
Yeah, I live in a part of the country where it basically rains all the time, like nonstop. So that'll be an easy time to like find the right weather too.
Oh no.
I love the rain though. It's like one of my absolute favorite things.
Honestly, same. I used to hate it until I didn't have it for almost a year when I went to
Right.
LA. So when it rained back home, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty.
Yeah, it's great. Absolutely. That's why I feel like at some point I'll end up in LA, like just sort of with what I want to do with my career. That's something I'm absolutely not looking forward to.
You should. LA is nice. Like there's a lot of people hate on it, and I can see why, but I think if you go there for a purpose, it can be great for your, whatever
Yeah,
it is that you want to do.
absolutely. So real quick, I've seen a lot of your social media posts, and this is something I've always been curious about. So talk to me about what it's like being like the most night owl, like nocturnal person I think I've ever seen. You know?
I have another person on my Instagram that's worse than me. It's Chandler. And
Okay.
he sleeps at 9 a.m.
Okay.
But it's been going on for a while, and it used to be cool, but it's not anymore. Now it's just a daily thing. But I think you know what? When I was in LA, I would wake up super early. During quarantine, that thing just blew out the window.
Yeah.
It was just whatever. I would sleep whenever. So yeah, but I think it comes from being able to make stuff, like be creative when other people are sleeping. And it might be like early in the morning before they wake up, which is impossible for me. So that's like late at night.
Right.
And like I've tried to change it, but I feel like if you still sleep like 8 hours, it's just shifted to like a different, like maybe
Yeah.
4 a.m. to 12 p.m., then you're still like a good person, You just
Yeah.
shifted your thing. But I think it really comes from feeling like if I feel like making music is like a 9 to 5 thing, or like I have to do it now because everyone else is working, it comes out kind of like forced out of me. While when I feel like, oh, it's my creative time, I could be like watching Netflix, but I'm choosing to make music.
Yeah.
It's always better.
Totally. Yeah, no, I've always kind of a little bit considered myself a night owl because I'm not good in the morning. But just seeing like a lot of your posts where you're like, it's 8:30 in the morning and I haven't gone to sleep yet. Like I'm still making a beat. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes, this
Yeah.
is me.
Absolutely.
You know what? Now that I live with my parents, they think I'm crazy.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love that. Yeah, no, it's kind of the same with me. Like again, I feel like it was such a thing. Like it's what stuck with me through college is like being like, oh, sleep is relative, Like it comes when it comes. Don't try to force it. Like
Yeah, I'll sleep when I die. That kind of mentality.
absolutely. Cool. So we are going to take a really short break for the audience, but coming up, we're going to talk about and sort of analyze your music a bit more specifically. But first, I'm going to throw to a meditation minute. Howdy, and welcome to the 5th edition of Meditation Minute. 6th episode, but I did not have one for you last week. Wanted to try something different. Hopefully you folks enjoyed that. So getting back to Meditation Minute, this is a recording I took quite a few months ago. I believe it was around April or May as well. Definitely some jealousy of that good weather. It's in Washington. It's been kind of cold, kind of rainy. Sort of similar to what most people think that Washington looks like and is. So this one was recorded in Sequim, Washington, and I recorded it sort of in a beach that was sort of in an inlet of the Puget Sound, sort of as it goes over to the Strait of Juan de Fuca. It's a really, really pretty geographical location. I love it. And there was a fairly powerful river for its size, and I just loved it. So I wore my shoes that I have for kayaking because I knew that I wanted to go into the water and record. So I basically stood in the center of it with my trusty pair of Octava MK012 mics and also with my trusty Sennheiser MKE 600 shotgun mic and just got a couple different perspectives of it. I ended up really liking this one. And it's actually a looped sound. So sort of I had made this with the intent of putting it in some sort of visual media. But yeah, it's pretty calming, relaxing water sounds and just, let the sound wash over you and enjoy it. All right, and we're back. So before we sort of get into your music specifically, I just sort of was wondering, and I've been asking this question to all my guests, in the previous or recent episodes. Where do you sort of find yourself most inspired? Do you find that it's like a physical place, or it's like a state of mind, or is it like a combination of both? What do you think about that?
Ooh, I love that question.
Cool.
Okay, so there's a couple things. So I've realized it's definitely not when I'm like super happy, but it's usually when I'm a bit pissed off. Like, for example, my first single, Flake, I made it a day after I was very mad.
Ooh.
And it kind of like gives me, I don't know why, but it's some sort of like motivation. And yeah, so that's definitely a thing. Also, I think especially when writing songs, places help me out a lot. Like a certain view, or for example, when I was in LA, there was one morning. I actually woke up on a morning, and it was 7 a.m. Actually, I barely slept, so it doesn't count. And I was like by the beach, and I was like far from my house and stuff, and it was just an empty place. And like in the morning where it's still not like the sun didn't come up yet, so it's kind of like blue grayish, and it was just a mess in a room. And I thought that was kind of pretty in some way.
Yeah.
And there was like a guitar, like an acoustic guitar, so I picked that up. And I do a lot of like voice memo stuff, so I did one that was like a 10-minute long, and I kind of wrote a song. Like, it wasn't finished, but the main idea was there. And then I had to go to work. But when I came back, I finished it, and that was like the fastest it took me to like make a song.
Cool.
It's like, when creativity comes, like you just have to do whatever it tells you to do. Otherwise, it's going to be gone.
Yep.
So yeah, I think just also generally I don't like intense lights. So it's just the lighting in a room and the room itself kind of like creates a feeling to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And also just definitely, just stuff with people make you like just, I think I started caring more about lyrics when writing songs came out of just things I was thinking about, like words or things people would like tell me. I think also Charlie Puth does that. I think he talked about I think We Don't Talk Anymore came from a friend telling him that, basically. And I thought that was super cool. And I can find myself a lot of times just thinking about things, like the most random times, maybe like when I'm at the gym, thinking of something cool and writing it down and then just like revisiting that. And I think another thing I did recently was, oh my God, for some reason, I had recommended some like songs, but with a lot of reverb.
Yeah.
So it was like sad songs in a space, which was basically reverb.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was like gorgeous. It had like Bon Iver, it had Billie Eilish, but all the comments were so depressing.
Oh my God.
And there were some that were super poetic. So I just wrote everything down.
That's sorry, not to interrupt.
Have you listened to that?
I think so. I've heard a couple different ones that are like where the comment section, like it's like the lo-fi kind of ones or like the slowed down versions of songs. It's like some of those comments are so depressing.
I know. It was so sad. And I was like, okay, that's kind of, you should be worried, but also I think it's kind of cute for some of them. So I have 3 notebooks. And I just write down whatever. A lot of times I write down stuff and I never see them again because I don't want to see what I'm writing.
Yeah.
But I wrote a lot of these comments and I really want to turn them into something like musically, you know.
That's so cool. That's such a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't own the words, you know, but I mean, I had the idea, so I think it's cool.
Yeah. They're YouTube comments. They can't like sue you, I don't think.
Yeah. I was even thinking like I could name it comment section. Because one of the comments was like, when the comment section gets you more than anyone else or whatever, something like that. And I was like, this is so sad, but also it's kind of cool. So
yeah. Oh my God. I feel that. That's awesome. That's hilarious. That's a super good idea. You got to do that. That's really cool.
Thank you. You know what? Another idea I had, it's kind of random, but when eventually I do merch, because I really want to do like merch with clothes and stuff, like everyone does. But I also want to do like, it could be included in the whole thing, like a little booklet with maybe lyrics or words or stuff that I write. I think that would be kind of cute.
Yeah.
Like I don't write poems or anything, but I write just whatever that comes to my head, and I think that would be like a cool, like little, like personal thing, you know?
Yeah, I love that. That's an awesome idea.
Thank you.
Cool. So moving on a bit, let's talk about some of your songs. So we'll start with Blind, which is the one that you just recently released. So it features Misdom, I think is the singer on it. And sort of talk to me a little bit about sort of working with Misdom and what like your co-write, co-production like methodology looked like. Were you guys doing it remote or like what that looked like? Yeah,
so Blind, it happened in a very complicated but honestly like really good way. The thing is I made it was like a remix of Falling by Trevor Daniels. And I was working on it for a while, and then I was like, you know, when you work on something too much and you're like, man, it's kind of shit, whatever. And then I just left it there. And then quarantine happened, and I kind of had like a creative block for a bit, and I hate that. I used to think it's not a thing. Like, oh, creative block is like procrastination. But you know what? It's not. It's a real thing. And it was pissing me off. So I was going back like old projects and I found that remix and I took the vocal out and I was like, ooh, I'm an idiot. That's kind of cool. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's a producer and he was under the same management as Misdom. So he showed me just like a bunch of like singers from that management. And then when I heard Misdom, I was like, holy shit, it's like The Weeknd, but different. So I texted him and I wasn't expecting him to respond, to be honest, but he did. And we wrote the song through emails, which was weird at first, but it worked, surprisingly. So he would just come up with an idea. He also just sent me drafts at like 4 a.m., which was a great time for me. So honestly, this collaboration was great. And yeah, it turned out really good. And you know what? I love it when the people I work with care a lot. Like even after he sent me the vocals, like he would send me like an EQ and he'd be like, you know what, you should cut it there because I think it would sound better or whatever.
That's a producer's dream.
I know. I was like, honestly, when I saw it, I just ran to my room and I was like, you won't believe this. Like, you know, he was great. And so we made the song. And the thing is, it was ready in June and it wasn't out until August because it was also my first label release. And I never put out anything without like with a label. So, and it was a co-release. So it was with two labels that sometimes work together. It was a Valiant and Kilobyte.
Cool.
So it's great. And it got a lot more views than Flake, which I'm so happy about.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Putting out music on your own is definitely tough. So yeah. And then we also made a music video, which is super recent. Like we put it out last week. If you wanna, I'll talk about it too. It's like a long story.
Yeah, do it. I was just watching. I was just gonna do a quick thing. Like, yeah, congrats. It's got. I was checking the stats earlier. It's got like 170,000 plus streams on it, and the music video has a bunch of views. I was just watching it before the interview, so that's really awesome. I congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Honestly, I was not my goal, and it was like a very ambitious goal, was 100K. So when it hit that, I was like, I'm the happiest person in the world. I will not ever check the views again. Mm-hmm. And it's getting close to 200K. And I'm like, ooh, this is great. But yeah, and the thing is, even more important than that is like the comments that you get from people, and especially like random people. I think that's when, it's like honest feedback, because when you're also looking for labels as an independent artist, you're going to get a lot of no's too, because there's labels that get certain types of songs. Like, for example, more pumped up songs and like gym-like songs or whatever. So it can be discouraging, but I've realized it's just the genre of each person. And EDM is a gigantic genre. And even the subgenres are so huge. Like, I consider mine trap EDM, but even under that, there's little subgenres of that, because there's hybrid trap. I guess that's what they say it is, and it's more aggressive stuff, but it's trap and it's EDM. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I was gonna talk about that. Like, that's so interesting. Like the concept of hybrid trap. That's really, really cool. It really goes to show like those electronic genres, like it kind of is sort of a beauty of music that's like computer based, is that sort of everything starts to amalgamate together, and everything sort of starts to congeal and like become like just overarching like computer type music. And I love that. And people repurpose the same, like it's like look at the history of like the 808 drum machine. Like that has touched so many different genres, and it's a piece of technology. It's like so like incredibly influential, and like that's something that I love and like am excited about like the future of music with. That it's just super cool.
Oh yeah, and I think also like just the mismatching of like different genres. I think that's also awesome, because I love 808s, just like I feel like everyone does. Even the people who don't know what it is, they love 808s. But like, for example, with trap, I think I like trap a lot, which might sound kind of weird to some people. It's because it can be kind of aggressive, but also there's so much sad trap music, and I just love the combination of the two.
Yeah, especially like recently, like with rest in peace, like Juice WRLD, and all of those kind of people. There's such like an interesting like subgenre of that. Like it's really, really cool. And Joji too, like stuff like Joji. It's just as like such a like result of people using the same types of technology and like furthering it and like innovating it and bringing like new levels of like emotional, like complexity to music that is made in machines, which is something that I feel like kind of always happens, like with music technology. Like it takes a few years of people getting used to it, and then later, as it's sort of becoming more established, people you really start to find like the humanity and like the personality in that kind of music.
Oh yeah, I remember actually, I think the first genre of like electronic music I've heard was dubstep, and I was like, what is this? Like, I liked it, but I was like, what the hell is that? You know? And I never made dubstep. I feel like dubstep is still a thing. Like, I know people who love and make dubstep. I've been to dubstep shows. They're painful the next day because your neck is banging.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like it, yeah. Again, I won't beat it to death, but yeah, I just love the interconnectedness of all like kinds of electronic music. So moving on a little bit, let's get a little nerdy. So I know you're an Ableton person. Tell me about like some of any secret like sauces you'd be willing to divulge. Any like Saint Mary production tips that you think like make your sound really good. Like feel free to get as in-depth as you want, whether it's like soft synths, whether it's plugins, whatever. Like what are your like go-to like, devices you use?
Ooh. So if it's not cool enough, just put trash on it. That's like my main thing. It's like if it's not fat enough, just put trash. Honestly, isotope trash changed my life. Also, another thing that made a big difference, I think, in my productions is like resampling a lot. So resampling, it's like when, I don't know, for someone that doesn't do like Ableton, because I think it's Ableton that has this term, when you like record the audio you're hearing in your DAW, like again, basically. So that's a good explanation. I do that a lot with like putting reverbs on stuff and distortion and whatever, and just recording it and reversing it and chopping it up. I just love working with audio more than MIDI.
Yeah.
Which came up kind of like later, because I would say sound designing from scratch in a synth, it's tougher for me than just fucking up everything and putting them into pieces and making something cool out of it. And for a while, I think I had a crack of Serum and it was not working. So I just focused on Massive, and I would watch like every tutorial for Massive and write down stuff as if it was like high school. Because I'm kind of used to that. I liked taking notes when I was in high school. So I would do that and I'd get like really good in Massive. But when I finally bought Serum, you should buy Serum. I know people say it's easier than Massive, and I can see why, but I was just used to Massive. But a lot of the things I do is I take presets, and I'm not ashamed, because I also just change them up a lot. Because a lot of these presets I have are super intense. I can't use them. So they're definitely modified. But it's a starting point than just starting with a saw. Like sometimes I just start with that, but I know exactly what I'm going for and stuff that I've done before, like make a bass line or make a super saw or whatever. But I don't like make growls from scratch.
Right.
I have a ton of growls. Or I don't make like snares from scratch. Like the same way, like I have them there. And a lot of producers say that. They're like, it's fine to use samples because it's your overall idea that's going to matter, and you are going to process them anyways.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you're not legit or anything. I guess, if you take like whole chunks of like melodic loops and you keep them the same and you just put a kick, I mean, that's not even fun.
Right.
So yeah, that's different. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think other stuff that I do, oh God, that's super generic, but the Fab Filter EQ.
Oh my God, changed my life.
I barely do actual EQ. I actually do like dynamic EQ for everything. I mean, apart from like a low cut and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's my it's what I use on both of our voices in the podcast. Like I use both like Q3, like Pro Q3 or Pro Q2, not Pro Q3. Is it 3? I can't remember. Whatever the most recent Fab Filter EQ is, and I use so then I use the multiband compressor too, the Pro MB. It like also changed my life.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my God. I mean, I also have all the waves, which is a crack. But I use only a few of them. Like honestly, when I first got the whole thing, it was Waves, if you're watching, thank you. I was not expecting it. But the thing is, when I first got it, it was a lot of VSTs. I was like, what is everything? Like, I don't know. But eventually I just used maybe like 5 of them, like the CLA, the 2A, 76. RVox is amazing. What else? I used to use Vitamin, but then I stopped. I don't know why. Just I have phases. But yeah, I feel like a lot of what I do is resampling. I find a cool sound and then I change it up and
Yeah.
yeah. And also, you know what? Once I started working with vocals, I feel like the coolest things that I came up with was with just manipulating vocals, because I feel like also the listener it's gonna feel that more because it is vocals, and I get that because I'm also a listener. It's not that I just care about what people are gonna think. It's just I don't know. It resonates with me more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's super cool. Yeah, no, God, there's so much of what you said is so incredible and like really helps like make your sound unique. Like for our listeners, we're talking pretty specifically in Ableton terms, but yeah, resampling is like one of the most incredible things to like take that sort of methodology and apply it wherever you want. So, you can do the same thing in Pro Tools. I kind of have swapped a little bit over to Pro Tools more with my like sound design workflow, but you do the same thing. You record and then you do like commit and then you manipulate that commit further and then you commit that commit and then you manipulate it further. And then it just, honestly, some of my like favorite stuff that I've ever made is from like me screwing a song up like 10 or 15 times, and then that final result is something that just sounds so wildly crazy. It's just so much fun, and it's honestly like an endless pit if you don't know where to stop.
Oh my God, I totally feel that. And especially, you know what? When I got sound toys, it was last year's Black Friday.
Yeah.
And like when you use like crystallizer and stuff like that,
Yeah.
resampling that is amazing. And then using like the transient, like the beats one, where it kind of like chops it up anyways. I think Skrillex was doing that a lot, so that's kind of how I found out.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just like little cool things. And I feel like the only bad thing is that when you make something cool and you want to do it like on a different chord or something like that, you have no idea how you made it. You just see that the input was resampling and you're like, well, shit, that's it.
Yeah, no, I love that. Shout out to that one like New York Times analysis of Where Are You Now, the like Diplo Skrillex song. He talks about the like flute sound in that
God.
is Justin Bieber's like voice resampled and distorted so many times that it sounds like a flute.
I know. I saw the video and I was like, there's so much music that's like where the coolest part is vocal manipulation. It is crazy. I was listening to like a drop that was like super cool, and it was basically an 808 and some really cool vocal chop with like rhythm and just a couple layers. But that was it. It was like vocals and an 808, and that was the drop.
Yeah, and like looking at people like Phineas and Billie Eilish, like they will get such crazy sounds with 3 elements in the song, like tons of layers of them, obviously, but like the first thing I think of is like When the Party's Over. There's a sub bass, there's piano, and there's vocals, and that's it. And they get such like incredibly like wild dynamic sound from that, and I just commend them so much for that.
Oh my God, I saw that and I was like, you know what? Wow, they're right. Yeah. Like, I mean, the songwriting is incredible, but I think another thing to say is that when that sub hits, it's so good because also it was missing before. And Phineas, from everything that I've been listening to, it's just that he put so much focus into the vocal production. Yeah. Everything else is pretty much just a piano and a bass, and maybe he adds some more stuff. But for example, I think When the Party's Over, that was it. Yeah. And I was just blown away because it feels so full because of the vocal production. And I think it comes to the point where the producer doesn't want to show off. They're just doing whatever they're doing for the good of the song. I think that's why it just turned out so amazing. Yeah. And from that, I feel like most of the things that I learned from Billy's music is that simplicity is best. And
Yeah.
Me especially, like I love to just add a billion tracks because I feel like it's not good enough. It needs more tracks, but sometimes it just needs different tracks.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for example, maybe the drop doesn't hit hard because the rest of the song is already at that level. Like you have to just bring it down, and then it's gonna have the impact that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's such an important thing. Yeah. There's so many people doing so much with like, sort of a limited tool set, or forcing like limitations on yourself can be something that gets really cool ideas going.
Yeah, like with synths, I kind of stick with Massive and Serum. I have Iris, but I didn't fall in love with it yet. I have to figure out how to fall in love with it.
Totally.
But yeah, I try to not make myself feel like, oh, it's because I need more sound. Like I have Splice too, and every time I come up with a cool idea and I'm in the like zone or whatever, I forget I even have Splice. But when I have like a creative block or whatever, I don't know where to start. I'm like, oh my God, 100 credits is not enough,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's hilarious. Cool. So Mary, we're kind of rounding about. We're almost to the end of the podcast. So I have kind of one last question for you. So overall, like, what would your advice be for anybody that's looking to get into production or playing an instrument or DJing? What would like your advice for them be?
Ooh. It would be to like just do it and not be scared of it and just have fun with it. Because when I first started, I was so excited and I thought the things I was making were the coolest thing ever. And they were not, but it was totally cool because I was like going somewhere. And as long as you have fun, it's the perfect thing for you. Like at the beginning, I wasn't even putting bass in my songs because I was like,
yeah,
no one can hear the bass, so I'm just not gonna add bass. You just do whatever and listen to the music you love and focus on what you love, because there's gonna be a lot of times where you feel like other people's music is more legit or you should be making this style or whatever. But at the end of the day, like especially if you want to do this as a career, I feel like trying to do that from the beginning, it's kind of like not a rebel kind of thing. I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like the different path, So why would you compromise on the style part or the audience part or whatever? Yeah, so I guess honestly, my advice would be just have fun and do exactly what you want to be doing and don't compromise for other things. And one thing that I remember, I think Alice in Wonderland said it somewhere. I follow her everywhere, like on all social media. But I think she said, basically, like make the music that you want to be making. Because if you don't, it's kind of like, why would you even do that? Like music is supposed to be like self-expression and everything. So yeah, honestly, just have fun with it. Because if you don't, it's just not gonna last long.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible advice. Mary, thank you so much for being a guest on this week's episode. Like, I super appreciate it. Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, thank you, Adam, for inviting me. And you can find me like pretty much everywhere. On Instagram, I'm Saint Mary. There's like a line on the front, but it's Saint Mary. And also Facebook, Spotify, and Apple Music and SoundCloud. It's also Saint Mary, st.mary. Yeah, and send me a DM. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Yeah, our audience, mandatory homework this week, listen to Blind and listen to Flake, the other track that we mentioned. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this has been Early Reflections. I'm Adam Daniel Jones. Find us on Facebook at Early Reflections with Adam Daniel Jones. I'm on Instagram at Adam Daniel Jones, all lowercase. And remember, Early Reflections have an important role in determining the sound and character of a space. See you soon.